What is up to the Sidewinder Nation, everybody that's following the Instagram, Facebook, YouTube page? I want to tell you I appreciate that. Please like and subscribe and hit the little bell notification on YouTube so you get an idea of when these videos drop. Now, I wanted to get this out, at least put this out. I felt that most law enforcement officers are remaining mute on this topic. And I am not going to comment as to my opinions on the actual situation that unfolds on that video. I think it pretty fairly well speaks for itself. It's pretty obvious. The general public is capable of noticing things that are egregious and things that should not happen. We're all God's children, generally. We all know that we're born with a certain innate idea of what is right and what is wrong, and I think just about everybody can look at certain things and say, there's an outcry, especially when it's not politically propagandized as a weapon of mass political destruction. This is one of those situations where you can take a look at it and go, not great. But first off, I will say my condolences, and that is not an empty condolence, issued to the family of the lost. There have been numerous individuals who have been lost in situations like these. It's always terrible. What I want to get on right now, as a veteran police officer, somebody who has experience in not only defensive tactics instruction, firearms instruction, the tactical community. I have worked the streets for 24 years total now. 21 with a major metropolitan department. And I will name you administrators that are watching this can sit calm. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to smear anybody. That's not what we're about here. But I am going to describe my experiences within the not only the industry of law enforcement and policing, but defensive tactics. That industry is quite fickle. I have made efforts for the last 22 years actively, and ever since I got involved in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and realized the effectiveness of the art in terms of its application to law enforcement, I have diligently, vigorously, and any other way you want to describe it, made efforts to help facilitate change in this community, as many others have. There have been a ton of guys that I'm having a network that have made the same efforts all across the nation. When Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu became an obvious answer for cutting-edge policing tactics, it was something we all realized, especially any guys that were higher level that realized what it was about and how good it was for the community and the law enforcement community, and how good it would be for minimizing this type of existential threat when it comes to the public. We realized it. We started trying to use this as a new tool. We tried to push it, and those of us that were capable of delivering it to departments, we made solid efforts to get it out there. Now I'm speaking on behalf of the guys who have made the effort. Okay, there's this massive tidal wave of people who are saying, condolences, yes, absolutely, condolences for the family and for the lost, but God, it didn't have to be that way, right? We're always going to have some ignorant ass things that happen that cause losses of life. That's just the way human nature is. We make mistakes, but these are the same types of mistakes that have been happening for decades. Okay, I got into policing in the late 90s, and I can tell you right now, when I made that showstopper video, go back and watch it. Okay, this is me ranting a little bit. I made the showstopper handcuffing video 3 weeks ago and posted it on Facebook and social media, and some people got some laughs out of it and thought it was kind of parody. Hell, I even said it was parody. I even made it a parody. Not as parody, but more or less prophetic parody, because I've seen it happen over and over. That pig pile that I was talking about is a bunch of guys, getting on top of a person and trying to effectively take them into custody. And I referred to an in custody death phenomenon known as positional asphyxiation. That's very real, that didn't start getting injected into law enforcement training until, probably solidly all across the nation as a don't do this type scenario for, I'd say, 15 years ago. May have been a little bit longer than that, but it's been largely a topic in policing for almost 2 decades now. And that's legit. You can look back at any agency and they're being trained that all over. Okay, so this has been another situation that we've known has been a problem for a long time. Listen up, guys. Your police departments, these are you civilians right now, your police departments, ask them where they spend the vast majority of their time. It's spent on firearms training, right? Because most administrators ignorantly think that that's the best way to minimize liability, is to train people to shoot better, shoot more, shoot better, shoot more rounds, trigger control, fundamentals, discipline, know your target and what is beyond, the pillars of firearm safety. Those things are all taught ad nauseum, okay? But the one thing that ain't taught is how to fight, how to be an effective police officer that is skilled in tactics of custody and control and combatives, okay? As violent as a punch looks, it's a hell of a lot better than a shot placed on somebody that's unnecessary. Now, I'm not talking about the loss of life involving the Nichols situation. I'm talking about other situations that turn into shoots, and we're always left questioning why. Okay, the vast majority of the reason is because departments spend so much time and money and effort into training people how to shoot that unwittingly they're training shooters, not fighters. And yet they have very little defensive tactics training. Okay, there are agencies, guys, here's the thing, you administrators, this is where you're going to sit here and you're going to have some self-reflection, right? I'm not an administrator, never have been one, never wanted to be one. I've been on the front line the whole time. That's where I always wanted to be. But I'm telling you right now, there are administrators that spend the vast majority of their thought process and their time developing shooting programs, and they have in-services every year. Police officers go through in-service every single year. They go through a 1-week in-service. And I'm telling you right now, I have worked as an academy instructor before for almost 10 years. I taught at an academy. And I have seen departments all over the nation have defensive tactics training that pretty much resorted to show up, do a few little baton strikes on a bag, and then they sign off on 8 hours worth of training. That happens. A 3-hour lunch break or a 2-hour lunch break early. Those hours were lost. Training documents were written, and yeah, we got it. We just kind of gloss over it. Okay. Most departments don't have a solid defensive tactics training program. Most departments don't have that. It's not available. I started my outside training back in 2002 in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and have done it ever since. So, I saw the value in it, as well as a lot of other police officers that began training it back in the day. I also saw that most departments are not progressive enough to provide a defensive tactics training program that's adequate to keep officers safe and free from liability and to safeguard the public. It's something that you don't see, okay? The United States military understands the importance of special forces units. They train to the hilt. They train in everything that they could possibly see. Yet the vast majority of police departments sink whole budgets into technology, new units, better units. Got to get from point A to point B, right? Thousands of dollars spent on ammo for training shooting, when that's less than 0.0001% of the time that an officer is going to be doing their operations. Less than 1% chance that an officer is going to have to shoot and kill somebody. Countless times through the years, officers are going to be involved in hand-to-hand confrontations where they have to physically take somebody into custody. It could be passive resistance, it could be active resistance, and most departments do not train that adequately. And I'm talking massively inadequate. Yet we'll spend hours upon hours in every in-service shooting for an event that's going to happen, that the less than 1% chance that event's going to happen, and there's 100% chance that an officer's going to have to go hands-on with somebody. So do we train an officer to be able to handle a situation effectively by themselves, or do we not, and they have to resort to the pig pile, which is what, unfortunately, we kind of saw in Memphis. Now, some of that is just officers willfully engaging in misconduct, but We see it a lot in in-custody death situations where they're trying to get a guy under control and they're all just laying on him, and next thing you know, he's still. What happened? Well, he asphyxiated because 5 of them were laying on his ass when it really would have only taken 1 of them. How do I know this? Because I've done it. I've been in situations, numerous situations, where I've had to fight a guy waiting for backup to get there. And then when backup did get there, I got knocked off of my position because some idiot comes in like a damn steamroller and rolls everybody off, jumps on top of them, and then you got everybody else jumping on top of it, everybody trying to grab an appendage. That's stupidity and it's lack of training. But I've had situations where I've had to do that as well. Take a guy, go to the mount, controlling, high elbow control in the mount, sit there for 3 minutes, gas them out, get them tired where they just don't feel like fighting anymore. I've done it numerous times. It didn't take 10 guys. And it wouldn't take 10 guys for an average police officer to do the same thing if they were trained appropriately. So I've argued for this with countless departments. I've offered services. So have other officers. So have other jiu-jitsu guys. They've offered their services. And they get met with a deaf ear. Simply because most administrators, it's a control thing. They want to control it. It's an ego thing. I'll brag on my department. I'm not going to name the name, but I'll brag on my department because I like to think they've always been a pretty progressive agency. Policies are constantly shifting. Policies are constantly being updated. Hell, every time I go in, there's a new document because a policy was updated because of something that they saw happen somewhere else. That's progressivism, right? Every department is not without its drawbacks, and it's things that they do inefficiently or sometimes in the eyes of the rank and file incorrectly. But at least it's a starting point to safeguard the public. Hell, to safeguard officers from themselves. Because compensating behavior begins with lack of training. You lose your mind when you don't know what to do. When you can't function in fog. Ask any veteran. They'll tell you the same thing. When stuff starts to go awry, you lose your mind. If you don't know what the hell to do. If you're not trained, you lose your mind. So what's the course of action? You know, I said I'll brag on my department. Jiu-jitsu has been an option. It's been offered. It's been considered. And I think it's on the verge of being mandatory. Now, mandatory is sweeping. That's pretty difficult to do in a short period of time. And generally, police reform in any format takes decades. Your most progressive agencies will generally consider, implement on a small scale, implement on large scale, and then make mandatory. That's generally how the flow of things go. Because it takes time. It does take time. I have seen the change in my own department, so I can really only speak to my department right now, but I hear about a bunch of other guys, and they're like, we don't offer it, we don't do anything. Now, some of the more progressive ones actually offer it's a budget. They give them money. They'll pay memberships to a jiu-jitsu academy somewhere. That's progressive. I don't know many doing that. Some do. But the better department. So I'm speaking to you cops now, man. If you're at a department that doesn't provide that training, understand you're hanging yourself out into the wind as far as liability goes. Because rest assured, if they don't provide the training, you go out here and get into a situation because of compensating behavior. They know they don't provide the training. The first thing that's going to happen is this massive separation between them and you. You're on your own. You're on your own. And they're not going to be the ones to take the fall. Not for you. So you have to go get training on your own. So you at least have the ability to make some form of argument that you had the public's best interest at heart. Look, we're all grown men and women here. If you're not reflecting on your own capabilities as a police officer, you're kind of stupid. You can't expect that a department is going to provide every single thing you need. That's why I always laugh when I hear these officers. They say stupid stuff like, well, they're going to make me carry my own gun? For instance, we just, at my department, just implemented red dots. And I actually hear people bitching and complaining going, well, You mean I got to pay for my own? They're not going to give it to me? Well, I'm just going to carry the one they gave me, and I'll stay on iron sights. Sure you will. Sure you will. Until you got to make that hostage rescue shot, which is less than 1% of the time. And you need the finite control and definition of that little red dot, as opposed to having to line up 3 focal planes. Or are you too ignorant to know that or to consider that? I hear these guys that get pissy because they got to spend some of their own damn money. Departments don't have a never-ending budget. So if they're not going to provide it for you, you have a duty to improve every day. You have a duty, just like your departments do, to go out here when you see situations like this and reassess and evaluate what your departments provide and what you're capable of. If you're not capable of doing the job, how do you defend yourself in a court of law? You don't. You don't. It doesn't happen. So what's the answer? Everybody scream police reform, police reform, police reform. Look, it's incumbent upon the agency to consider their training or lack of training that they're giving their officers. It's incumbent upon the officers to seek the training necessary to do the job. Stay cutting edge. I always ask people, would you go to an 80-year-old surgeon for brain surgery who hasn't been to the latest in-service class or is not up to date on the latest techniques involving brain surgery? Or would you want to go to a 25-year-old guy that's fresh out, that's up on the latest techniques? Hell, everybody's going to say they want to go to the guy that knows the latest. Yet that's what's running around out here on the streets. Antiquated perceptions of a job reinforced by inadequate training provided by departments. That's what's happening. That's the reality. And until it changes, there will be no reform. The public will not be happy. It won't. So there's 2 ways. I suggest there's 2 ways this is going to change. One, and I posted this on Facebook, and I'll stand behind this figuratively in terms of incarceration, a chief or a high-level administrator's head will roll right alongside the men and women they employ who make these mistakes of mind or heart or morals. Their head will roll right alongside the men and women they employ for not providing training. Now that'll spur some damn reform, because every administrator out there is going to go, I don't want no part of that. I ain't trying to lose my $250,000 a year chief job over that guy who some people would say is an idiot anyway. I'll say it. There's chiefs that know they got idiots on the force. No, they got morons out there working. Guys, they wouldn't trust to back them up on a call. They wouldn't trust them to back them up on anything. Yet they're answering calls as primary. And a chief, until they have to answer for that guy as a responsible party, nothing will change. On the flip side, until a crusader chief, decides to be the savior of all mankind and develop a program that's noteworthy in terms of the IACP or any other progressive police organization and facilitate some change, it won't change. Mark my words. There will be a chief who's hailed as the next coming of Jesus Christ because he develops a comprehensive BJJ program. Mark my words. It'll happen. Where it's going to happen, I have no idea, but it will happen. One of you guys watching, you're probably a chief watching this somewhere, so you know what? No disrespect for your position. You guys got a lot of stuff to deal with. I get it. I'm just bottom level patrol guy, but I'm telling you right now, somebody like you will develop a program that's comprehensive and will be hailed as the next standardized format for defensive tactics and policing. And I ain't even saying it's got to be all jiu-jitsu. It'll be hybrid. There'll have to be certain elements of it change. It'll involve some elements of wrestling for safe takedowns. It'll involve jiu-jitsu. It'll involve probably some form of boxing and striking. It'll be a hybrid MMA program. Guaranteed. It'll be that. I'm confident that it will be that. You know, so you officers and have to consider the departments you work for, whether it's safe to stay employed there or not. In evaluating mine, I'll give mine a big props. A lot of good changes, a lot of progressive changes. One of the most recent techniques I saw that I actually approved of was a two-man takedown, controlled takedown. One guy, communication exercise. I'm taking high, you're taking low. Fantastic. Fantastic. But you know what? 99.9 don't do that. 99.9 don't train that. You know, we have some missteps at ours, in my opinion. But it's at least progressive. So you guys, and it's on the path. So you guys that work for these agencies that are doing nothing, well, how can you scream foul when you get hemmed up? You can't. You can't scream foul when you get your ass hemmed up for doing some stupid stuff and you don't seek the training and the department don't provide it. So this is a two-way street. Departments got to want, administrators got to want to provide the training. They have to make it mandatory, and then officers have to buy into it and go do it. And you know what? Sitting around a briefing table, I had this one to you too. Another thing that pisses me off is all these guys, and they're not always just old heads. It's like guys that are afraid to be forced to get into physical shape, because endurance is another part of custody and control. When you have no endurance, you have to up your escalation of force. They bitch and complain because they don't want to be forced to do things physical. They don't want to be forced to maintain a physical standard. And then when you throw jiu-jitsu in there, they go, "Why? I'm going rolling around with sweaty guys. I ain't rolling with these guys. I ain't trying to do all that." Okay. That mentality is allowed to propagate. So are we worried about pissing off the old heads who don't want to do it? Or do you go get with the program or put in your retirement papers? It's real simple. Cut loose that expensive annual salary in favor of a younger guy who don't know any better, who don't know any different other than what he walks into. Hey, the day I started, jiu-jitsu was a part of the program. We had to do so many hours of it a month. That's just always been the case. These guys that want to bitch and complain and be a liability, cut them loose. We don't want to do that. Civil service laws, rules, blah, 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 blah. What's the answer? So hopefully some of you guys, I didn't make this to dime out any departments. You know, hopefully you people that are officers here are able to sit in your car or sit wherever you're watching this and go, "I'm proud to work for the department I work for." I think they make at least a reasonable effort to provide the level of training that I need. And make it understood, it is not, no department anywhere in the United States can provide all the training that an officer needs to face what they will face on the street. They can't. They cannot. But they can definitely make it progressive enough that they're at least providing you some insight, or that they at least tell you. And another thing I'll say about my department is good. And guys, this is another example. If you go to your department and they don't suggest to you outside places to train. I know some of our DT guys, I'm pretty proud of our DT guys. They do pretty well. Hey, you know, this is just a little bit of what you need here. I suggest you go to, you know, Gracie Baja, you go to, you know, one of these other places, these other big organizations. Say Gracie Baja, just kind of pulled that out of my butt. One of these big other defensive tag or these big other jiu-jitsu organizations, and get the training you need. Any local one, they're on every street corner. Hell, I own one in a town that has 1,400 people, and there's a jiu-jitsu school with 150 students. They're everywhere. You can find them, and some departments do really, really well. They go get the training you need. This is a little taste. We'll give you some basics, but you need to go outside and get the training you need. Guess what, guys? You don't have an excuse. It's tax deductible. It's tax deductible. You don't have an excuse. You individuals don't have an excuse. Administrators may have a little bit of one, but I'm diming y'all out too if you're not making it mandatory. You gotta make it mandatory. If it's not mandatory, then just, you're not doing enough. You're not doing enough to change the culture. That's it. That's all there is to it. You know it works. You know it works. You know it's valid. Make it mandatory. I don't care if it's a day a month, but at least make it mandatory. So when you stand in front of a family, you're not giving them some bullshit, empty condolence of, they were just bad guys. But yeah, they may have been, but I want to know, are you, if my son or my daughter dies at the hands of police, is it going to be terrible? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the first thing I want to know is, show me your training records. Show me what you're training these guys. What are you training them to do? Where's the focus? What are we supposed to, what do we want our cops to do? Make traffic stops? Write tickets? Investigate crashes? What are you training them to do? What does your training documents look like during your week of in-service? What do you have them do? If there is no Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in there, no solid defensive tactics being taught, your name better be on the side of the building after the lawsuit. That's all there is to it. And as a aggrieved victim, they would deserve it. They would deserve it. It's got to change. That's the bottom line, guys. It's got to change. Yes, it's a rant, but I made this to disclose an insider's perspective of what really goes on in a lot of departments. We ain't even going to get off on the small departments. The ones that have no budget, no training, no nothing. Memphis doesn't fall under that category. Memphis is a large police department with a budget. Some of these small places, these little towns that have one or two cops, they get nothing. Nothing. So we're not even getting on them. The big agencies have no excuse. None. Officers that work for big agencies have no excuse. None. Do your freaking job. Get your training. Administrators, do your job. Give the training. Or provide them an avenue to get it. One way or the other. So insider's perspective, guys. Hope you, it's a bit long. I hope you like at least the peek inside the briefing table, the peek inside the organizations and how they work. Okay. This, perception of a brotherhood, thin blue line, all that garbage. Look, I ain't felt that in a long time. That may have been present when I first started doing this job years ago, but understand it is a job. It's a job. Your heart and your mind got to be in the right place. You got to want to protect the public. This stuff about standing around, that's the most egregious thing I saw that I will address in the video is the lack of empathy for the humanity of another person. I've always asked myself what I would do if I ended up in a shoot. I have trained and I hope and pray that immediately after, if I'm still standing, you know, I know number one, you win every gunfight you're not a part of. That's my first rule, okay? But if it finds me and I have no choice, I have trained myself mentally and physically to hopefully snap out of that and provide the life-saving care, the basic care that's necessary. Every day I carry a tourniquet, carry a leg rig, drop leg rig with 2 tourniquets, shears, a chest seal, and an Israeli rescue bandage. It's on me at all times. I like to think that I would use that. And I know many officers at my department that do it, that are that minded that way. And that's a progressive agency. It's where you need to be. But guys, your officers have to be in the right frame of mind. They have to be trained. And that's all there is to it. Okay. So there's your glimpse. There's your insight. I keep finding more things to talk about, but you know, a lot of bad, but rest assured, guys, it'll happen again. It'll happen again in short order. That video I posted about the showstopper handcuffing technique, go watch it. It's just a basic little technique I came up with years ago about how to handcuff somebody that by myself when I've got them. It's using jiu-jitsu, infusing law enforcement tactics. It's not about me in this. It's about us being better as a community, safeguarding our community the way we're supposed to, okay? And here, just Fox News pops up on my phone. Memphis police announced major change after releasing the video. Major change. It just popped up. I don't even know what it is. God knows. Probably, who knows. But, guys, yeah. It'll happen again, okay? Mark my words. It'll happen again. So if you're public people, get on the proper path to the police reform. And I think now agencies are immediately doing a better job of immediately holding people accountable for doing criminal shit, which is what they should. The one thing that's not changing is the training. So you guys in the public, man, keep pumping the brakes. Keep pumping the brakes. You're getting what you want when it comes to holding individuals accountable, but it is not changing. The training is not changing fast enough. It's not there. So, Godspeed to everybody. Much love and respect to all God's children. Guys, your interactions with the police. What the hell? Anyway, much love and respect to everybody.